All right. Well, I guess I'll give an introduction here. My name is Charlie Eccles. Welcome to the very first inaugural episode of Burritos and Bodyslams. I think this is a new project that we're going to try and get off the ground probably about once a month. It gives the three of us who our worlds have collided through many different things an excuse to sit down, have some burritos and talk some wrestling. We have got a lot of things on the agenda, but my name is Charlie Eccles, and I'm joined by the other two co-hosts of this, Mr. Andy Heller and Mr. Casey Kelderman. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Go for it. Oh, you're gonna
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. What's up, everybody? I'm Andy, the resident fat dude of Fat Dude Digs Flicks, and coming to you in video format here to kind of work on a little side project, a little thing to get the three of us together in one room to just kind of, I don't know, shoot the shit a little bit about all kinds of different stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited to be here and have this new venture for all of us.
Yeah. I'm going to steal Andy's intro. I'm going to try it. All right? Ready? Because impressions are part of this show.
They are.
And
they
so
are.
I'm going to start off with an Andy Heller. Okay?
Oh.
All right, here we go. What is up, everybody? This is the resident schmuck of Backlot 605, Casey Kelderman. I'm coming to you today, recorded from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. That was my Andy Heller, but yes, I am Casey Kelderman, one of the co-hosts of the Backlot 605 podcast and the Slashlot 605 podcast. And I am so glad we're doing this because I feel no pressure doing this show.
Right.
And that feels good. And I know Andy feels the same about
easy peasy. Just sit back, relax, and talk. That's all there is to this one. It's nice.
I agree.
The best thing about it, I don't have to watch a movie to prep for this.
Nope.
I can just show up and put this microphone in front of me.
And that was kind of the reason we wanted to do this. We just wanted to get together, wanted to do something to, appease people that of similar interest, I think. And then also just really shoot the shit. Because I think whenever the three of us get together, like it's usually something either Fat Dude Digs Flicks related or Backlot 605 related or SuperCon related. And like our three worlds have just kind of collided in these facts, but it always comes back around that we're all big wrestling fans. And we always somehow relate it back to that. And I think we're not going to do a lot of like this week in Meltzer's top 5, type of stuff. And we're not going to argue with each other like Conrad and Eric. Nothing against those guys. I think this is going to be a little bit more nostalgia related, and we're just kind of here to talk some wrestling, some enjoyment, and do a little check-in with each other during these hard times, and how just shut our minds off, and hopefully everybody else does the same.
Yeah. I think it's we all come from different where we're at with our appreciation for wrestling and where we came into an appreciation for wrestling. And I think it's kind of fun to talk about that because there might be weeks where I don't watch anything like wrestling related. But as I was telling you earlier, I was like, I will listen to more wrestling podcasts than I do like watching any actual wrestling that's going on right now.
Right.
So it's like, it's always there. That love and appreciation for it is always there. But I think what really got me excited for this is it's just the three of us, like being able to sit and talk, like whatever our conversation, wherever that goes, even if it's not wrestling related or about how delicious this burrito is, we just get to have a chat. And I like that. That's why I'm here. So I'm super excited.
And I like how our conversations can just start by the two names in the title. It's like, well, we're talking burritos and body slams.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But where else in between that are we going to talk about? What else are we going to
There's more to life than the two of those things.
Yes. And I think
as much as that sucks.
I wish it was only about burritos.
Right.
Make my day very easy.
Yep.
And I think what Andy said is right on point. Is we're all coming from different perspectives, especially in like the wrestling world.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're all wrestling fans, but like I haven't watched Raw or Smack. I haven't watched WWE in almost 2 years.
Okay.
I have no idea I don't know who's the champ. I don't know anything, any storylines that's going on.
I don't think they do either.
So. Well, that's probably true. But yeah, so I think that coming at it in a nostalgic way and just like a comfort way, because for me, like wrestling and like burritos too, this definitely falls in that.
Yeah,
it's just a comfort.
Yeah, it's comfort food.
Yeah, it's just a big warm blanket.
Yeah.
Like if I come home from work and I'm like, I just want to shut my mind off, not worry about anything in the world. What am I going to watch? I want to put on wrestling.
Right.
I'm not going to watch anything else. I don't care about this, like especially nostalgic ones, because I don't care about the storylines. It doesn't matter. It's in the past. That's already happened.
Right.
And it feels good to have that, like especially like us in the movie world, or like you with like SuperCon and the nerd culture. It's like, what's happening now? How does this relate to me? How can I argue with someone about it?
Right.
It's like, well, I just want to talk about wrestling and watch wrestling. Like,
and there's a
fun.
lot of good things going on within wrestling right now. I'm not going to deny that. I mean, it's just we're in the middle of COVID and we can't get like the medium of professional wrestling will move on without fans there, but it's best when they are there. So right now we're in kind of a weird time right now. And just so you're aware, Drew McIntyre is the champ currently.
The chosen one?
The chosen one.
He's the Raw champ.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And Roman Reigns turned heel. And
see, I missed like the thing I was waiting for the last 5 years of watching wrestling, for Roman Reigns to turn heel. And I saw that. I'm like,
yeah, I look forward to getting to that part of our conversation. But I did want to say, because that was you summed it up perfectly there. It's a comfort food. And I think one of the other things here that, we'll talk about as we go along is we're going to talk about male mental health here.
Yes, and that was a big reason I wanted to do this. Yeah,
important. But for me, one of the things that really got me through a very rough spot in my life was wrestling.
Oh, same here.
It was just being able to watch it and enjoy it and get myself kind of caught back into that world. It can be silly at times, but it's a lot of fun, and it does work as that perfect comfort food. So I'll say it again. I'm very excited for all of this. I think it'll be fun.
And one of the things that I'm going to bring up today in our wrestling topic is very silly. So I'm very excited that we're going to talk about it. But anyway, let's start this up here with our first. Let's take that first bite. We all had a burrito today, and we want to talk to you about the burritos that we ate. I'm gonna start with Casey.
Yeah.
Tell me about your burrito. Where did you get your burrito? What did you like about it? What did you dislike about it? Go on.
I'm super excited that every time we do the show, it's like, well, I guess I got to have a burrito.
Right. I don't want us to think that we have to wait a month before we can have a burrito.
Oh, no.
All right, I'm having one tonight. I'm having it's a 2 burrito Saturday.
So we could have called this podcast.
2 burrito Saturday.
I got mine from Giliberto's, which has 20 plus different burritos on their menu. Like it's amazing. And I live 5 minutes from the new Giliberto's in Sioux Falls, so it's like just a drive away. I went with the Arizona. It's called.
Ooh.
So it's a steak and potato burrito.
Okay.
So I like my meat and potatoes. I'm an Iowa boy. That's what I grew up on. So
they could have called it the Iowa.
They could have called it the Iowa.
They could have just called it the Casey's burrito.
It was delicious. I don't know. It's hard to not do a burrito right. I've had bad burritos, though. I think we'll do a bad burritos topic at some point. But
I've had alcohol. So.
We've all had Taco Bell.
Yeah.
It was really good. It was really good. I highly recommend Giliberto's. For me, when I first moved to Sioux Falls, the only Giliberto's that was probably here at that point was the one on Minnesota Avenue.
Yes.
And it was, you went there at 2 a.m. because you're drunk from the bars downtown and you wanted tacos and junk food like that.
Little history on that building too. If you didn't know that building used to be a Long John Silver, and
I remember that.
That was and right next to it was a Wendy's that just closed down. So I mean, it's
like the only restaurant on that street now on that side.
Essentially, yeah. I think because there was a Taco John's there, and that closed there. I think because I used to live on 22nd and 22nd and Phillips, so I used to get high and drunk and walk to places, or just drunk. But
And Gilly Birch's is the go-to.
well, I mean, Gilly Berto's came after the fact. So, but I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go on. I want to hear you gush all about it.
That's about it. That's all I got to say. Like that's what Gilly Berto's was known for in Sioux Falls, and now it's kind of like, well, no, that's like the taco restaurant, the Mexican food restaurant, if you want to go out to it.
And it's more of like a California taco joint. Like it's not like, I know that Andy went to Jackie's, which is a little bit more, I would call high end in Sioux Falls. But like that's Gilly Berto's feels like that California surf shop taco joint that you get off the beach and you go and have a couple of tacos with your buddies. And yeah. I want to hear about this Jackie's wet burrito.
Yeah. So but first I'll just say I love Giliberto so much. Like it is my go-to. But I was like, well, if we're gonna do a burrito podcast, I'm bringing the heat right away. The first one that I get is what I consider one of the best in town, and I got Jackie's wet shrimp burrito. This is you get your rice, your beans, and then this perfectly cooked, seared, seasoned shrimp put in there. Burrito topped with cheese and like a cheese kind of ranch sauce on top of it.
Oh man!
Like I feel like I'm the only one that had to eat a burrito with a knife and a fork because it was covered. But oh my God, it's so good, and I love how Jackie's does their shrimp. Like some places just don't season their shrimp in their burritos. I don't like as much or what, but here it's perfect, and I love this burrito. So I highly recommend. Like I highly recommend Giliberto's. Like
Giliberto's has a great shrimp burrito too.
Do they?
Yeah,
okay. I'm gonna have to put that on the list. But I love Giliberto's, but for this alone, this needs to drive you.
And you went to the one on the west side of town. You didn't go to the
east side of town. This
east side
is
of
the
town.
one on 10th Street, East 10th Street, which there's a Giliberto's right over there too, kind of East 10th.
Oh yeah. The old okay.
And that's where that's over where the fat dude resides. On that side of town. So
we're more neighbors than you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ooh, Charlie. So I stopped there, grabbed this, and the only one thing I will say about Jackie's though is maybe come up with a curbside service plan. Curbside service, figure it out.
I went to Jackie's the day that Trump got elected out of spite.
Drown my sorrows.
I went there and I'm just like, I just need something made by somebody not from this country. But all right, and I went to Pancheros for the first time in my life. I shouldn't say for the first time. I explained this to you guys. Like whenever I have Pancheros, my wife always brings it home from work because her job, whenever they have to stay late, will always bring in Pancheros. And she always brings me like a half-eaten cold vegetable burrito, and it's delicious every time. I didn't know that Pancheros like grills their tortillas right then and there. So I was watching this in astonishment. It's
a magical experience.
No, it really is. Like, I mean, as it was going, I just heard, I don't know who much, but I know I love you. And it was just slow motion press on that. And then she grilled it, and I went with the pork. What are they? I wanted to say adobada, but that's from Giliberto's. One of the carnitas. That's the word that they used for that. With a little bit of guacamole on it, and some fresh guacamole. Some guac. It was that was god dang delicious. That was so good. And I went with a Mr. Pibb for my drink because I haven't had a soda in a month. It's aside from coffee, that's how I get my caffeine, and it was a good pairing. That was a good meal. I'm very excited for my second burrito today, though, but I am very, very happy with that. So, Casey,
yes.
If you were to rate your burrito on a scale of 10? 10?
Okay.
Is that
sure?
Yeah, because I feel like 5 is not giving it enough leeway. What would you give the Arizona burrito from Giliberto's?
I'll give it a solid 7. Because for me, I love like so much cheese and the beans, like it's just falling out. Like that's my favorite. Like Pancheros is like one of my favorite burritos to get. But this was a solid change. You know, it was steak and potatoes. Had some cheese in it too. It was solid.
Nice. Andy.
Oh boy. Man.
On a scale of like I'm never eating that again to I just came.
Look.
No numbers. That's just what you're.
I feel like where are we wanting these conversations? Just are we going for that 17 plus on YouTube or what? I would give this one. I'd give it a 9. I would give it a 9. I want people to try this burrito because I think this burrito is awesome. It's not perfect.
Okay.
But I mean, you know, you really gotta caress if you want to go for perfection to get a 10. If we're going back to what you said earlier,
caressing. Caressing usually does that. Yes.
But yeah, I would give this one a 9. I really think it's great. It's the way they season that shrimp and the sauce they put on top that really pushes this one overboard. So
that's awesome.
9.
9. I'm going to give Pancheros. I think I'm going to go with like a 6.5 on this one. Yeah, I'm gonna use the half on this here. I don't think it was their tortillas were to die for.
Yes.
That was like one of the best things here for us. But I will say, like, the rice was not my favorite in there. Like it felt a little crunchy, a little overcooked, but I it's not going to stop me from going to Pancheros again. I will say that. So that was our first bite. How did you guys feel about burrito review of the month?
That was fun. That was a nice. We'll just see where this goes, like with our burrito ratings, because if we're going to talk about a 10, did this burrito make you come?
I think we should come up with something wrestling related.
Yeah,
tie into the burritos.
I think so too. This burrito was a body slam.
On a scale of like Barry Horowitz to Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Barry Horowitz to Ty, the perfect 10.
Oh, Sean Spears. Oh, that's a guy that they should have put the pencil behind. We should talk about that sometime. Because he. Okay, so I went to I went to All In, the original like indie pay-per-view. That was one of the coolest experiences as a wrestling fan I've ever had. But then I went to All Out, the now AEW pay-per-view, and got to watch the Cody Rhodes, Sean Spears blood feud, if you will. And I'm still of the belief that Spears should have went over on that. Like Cody should have done the job on that one. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, because I mean, Cody's doing great things, but I don't think it would have hurt him to lose that match.
With AEW, like I don't watch a lot of AEW, but I do read. Like that seems to be how I'm taking what's going on right now. Is I'll read a lot of like Bleacher Report stuff and their kind of viewpoint of the matches. With AEW, I think they're in a weird predicament with putting the people who brought the company together over and then trying to put other people over. And I think sometimes there's a really good balance. It seems like I think when the Young Bucks will put other people over.
Right.
That's great. I think with Cody though, like you both want Cody to succeed, but you also want him to help push other people, because I think, that's what his dad would do. But his dad would also want to take that spotlight too. So I think in that case, because Sean Spears, I got to remember to call him that.
Yeah.
I think because he's so good, he's someone that really needs a rocket strapped to him and shot to the moon. So.
I agree. Casey, do you have any thoughts?
I
on
haven't
Sean
watched
Spears?
AEW in a long time. Like I was on it right away when it was first out and kind of fallen off. But I love Cody Rhodes. Rhodes. Like
Okay.
Cody has always been one of my favorites, and yeah, I maybe this is a little selfish where I'm like, well, just let Cody go. He's one of the main 5 guys in this.
It is his company.
It is his
Yeah.
thing. So, but I think he has always done that as a performer. They'll put over guys when they need to go over.
Mhm.
He understands when they needs to happen, and I think whenever he gets a new gimmick, especially like in WWE when they had no idea what to do with this guy,
And he'd do
awesome with everything.
They gave to
It
him.
didn't matter if he was in Legacy or when he had the mask. What was his?
Oh,
the good looking and then
dashing Cody Rhodes, and then I forget what
like undashing or something.
I forget
like
what
that.
they called him. Yeah. But that was awesome.
Yeah,
He had
and
a
then-
great match with Mysterio at WrestleMania because of all that. Yeah.
And then he did the stuff with Sandow and he did the Stardust, and like he could do it all.
Mhm.
And I think now that gets to have all creative control of himself and his character, I think that's awesome. And I think that company itself knows what they're doing for the most part, from what I've seen. Again, I haven't watched that in probably how long has it been out? Over a year.
This week was their year anniversary.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I haven't probably watched in 9 months.
Or I should say 8. This week was their year anniversary of Dynamite on TNT. Prior to that, they had a few pay-per-views. So, I mean, I think they've been around for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
So
I watched like the first 3 months, and then I don't have cable, so I don't have.
it's the same here. Yeah.
So.
And I'm still like, I think just because I know too many people within wrestling now, like having done some of these shows, like I've never heard a bad word about Sean Spears, not just as a performer, but as like a person. He, they all say that his one weakness is women, and like and now he's married. So I mean, somebody came around and pulled the reins on him, but
can you blame him?
He's always been this solid performer, and knowing one of the people that I know that was on the inside is Nick Dinsmore, and you guys know Nick and Eugene, for those who aren't watching him. He and I got into a conversation about this right after he got released by WWE, because there was talks of us trying to bring him in, but he was in negotiations with AEW at the time, so we couldn't. And he was a guy that everyone said he has all the talent in the world, but the right people just weren't behind him. He had everyone else pushing them to the right people, but the right people were not behind him for some reason. He's got a great look. He's smooth in the ring. He's super smooth in the ring. I just don't understand why he had a
gimmick that was super over.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's such an easy thing for the crowd to get involved with, and merchandise that. Like,
yeah.
Can we talk about that for a second? Not to kind of hijack this conversation.
Yeah.
In a different direction. Why do you think it is? And I pose this to both of you because you both have watched enough wrestling to kind of see. Why is it that sometimes when a fan movement starts, why is it so difficult? Like, if there's something that happens that the audience really takes and runs with, why are there so many occasions when that really just blasts off, but yet the brains behind the scenes aren't as willing to roll with it? And with that, I mean, you can go with the 10 gimmick. You can go with the Cesaro section.
Zack Ryder.
Yeah,
Ryder was probably the best example of all of them. Right. Yeah.
So it's like, why is there such a hesitation to commit to these athletes who are so dedicated to their character, and they have a fan base? You feel like if the primary goal is to see dollar signs, and this is something that clearly will generate those dollar signs because the people are already doing it themselves. Mm-hmm. Where's the hesitation, do you think?
If I were to theorize on this, I think it all stems from corporate planning. A lot of this, okay, we would like to give the push to this guy, and we're going to spend 2 months in the background spending money getting prepared for it, and then suddenly Ty Dillinger comes in and they're like, why is everybody cheering him? We've been putting so much money into trying to get this guy over. And then they fall behind because it's not just one person I mean, it all falls on one person's shoulders at WWE, don't get me wrong, but he's not always at the forefront of it all because he's running a corporation. And I'm not saying that, like, I'm not trying to give him any forgiveness here by any means either, but I think we've had plans, and like, we're not willing to change, we're not willing to pivot as quickly as we could, and now we've fallen off. That's kind of my theory on it. I don't know about you guys, but
yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I totally agree with that, and I think it's partially it's a thing with, if you run and own this company, and it's a character that you've built and something you want to push, and that you're like, that's our guy, that's who we want to be the face of the organization that I am running.
Mm-hmm.
And then this other guy comes in and says, well, no, all the fans like me more, and I've gotten myself over more
mm-hmm.
than your guy that you've been pushing. I think there's a little spite in there.
Oh yeah, I would assume
but again,
is.
I think there definitely is still part of the corporate stuff of, no, we've been planning for the last 2-3 months on having this much merchandise and this guy to appear on this show and,
mm-hmm.
and do this show and have this guest appearance and whatnots. And I think that's all of a sudden a Daniel Bryan or a Zack Ryder or whomever comes in and they're like, well, I'm not putting this guy on the Today Show.
Mm-hmm.
No one knows who this guy is. Everybody knows who Cena, Reigns, Rock
mm-hmm.
are. You know,
mm-hmm.
Everybody knows who those guys are. So I think there is a little bit of that. It's the stuff we've built versus the stuff the audience has built.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they do give the audience a bone most of the times. They're like, all right, well, you guys are putting over, like I said, Zack Ryder, Daniel Bryan.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Bryan's probably the best example of them saying, well, all right, you guys want him. Here he is.
Well, and that was also a case of Punk left.
Yeah.
That was not supposed to be what was going on. And
again,
Bryan,
I think there's a little spite in that by the company towards the guy that left.
Yeah,
it was like,
course,
well, we're going to push the guy that's pretty much you, like
mm-hmm.
very similar backstory to you. And we're going to give him the title, and he's going to beat our 2 guys at WrestleMania, or our 3 guys
that year. Yeah,
he's going to beat Evolution at one pay-per-view in one night. So, see you later.
Yeah.
And I think Bryan's been obviously the best example possibly ever of that. But again, I think with like Zack Ryder, it's like, well, we'll give you a T-shirt and some merchandise, and you can do your YouTube show. That's fine.
Well, and then they took his YouTube show. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
That's one thing that the one thing I'll never understand is, like, they are, from a contract perspective, is they're independent contractors, but you can't make money on Twitch. Like,
I was gonna say, isn't there something else going on too?
That's
like
what's going on.
Or is there? Like Cameo, I think, is another one that they're.
Yeah. So I mean, they shut that down, and then, like, I mean, and without Zack Ryder, they would not have any YouTube content, and I think people look over that fact. It's, without Zack Ryder, there would not be a lot of the internet stuff that's going on with WWE.
Hell, I'll go back a few years before that. They probably wouldn't have any like internet shows without The Miz and Morrison doing their stuff.
Yeah.
And again, that's a case of those 2 guys were buddies, and like, well, what are we going to do backstage while we're waiting to possibly be on the show?
Right. Well,
let's just make our own show.
I loved my favorite one of my favorite episodes of True Long Island.
Is it the Dirt Sheet?
That's what their first show was. Yeah. But the True Long Island Stories was Zack Ryder's, and one of his first episodes that he did, he's just filming it at home, and he's got his TV, and it's just a blank TV. He goes, "This is a television." Then he grabbed his own action figure, and then he put his action figure on top of the television, and he goes, "This is Zack Ryder on television." And then the person holding it up is standing in a bucket of ice, and he said, "This is the WWE getting cold feet about throwing Zack Ryder on television." That stuff was genius. He got himself over so well.
I have a perspective to give up to you, or an idea to give to you guys, and get your ideas on it, because I've always thought, like, within like movies or comic books, there's always been the meta aspect, and at some point, like if you look at, like, for movie's sake, even like Ferris Bueller or Deadpool now in the movies,
right?
Or Scream. It's like, well, we know we're in a movie, and this is what we're parodying.
Mm-hmm.
And like comic books, especially Deadpool, is the biggest example of that.
Yeah.
Can wrestling ever do that?
I think
should we have a Deadpool wrestler? Like, he knows he's not getting pushed. He knows who is going over, what move's going to happen. Like, you could just yell it out in the crowd.
I think the closest we're going to get to that is probably the Bucks right now. Like, I mean, the Bucks came out with being the elite, and that's how they came up with AEW. I mean, I've always made the comparison that like the Young Bucks are to wrestling what Deadpool is to comic books. There are people who will always go against them and say that this is, to turn a phrase, bucking tradition here for you. But the Young Bucks, I mean, like, with all the super kicks, I mean, I've been to a Young Bucks match. Like, there's too many super kicks. That's even for me. But I think there has to be
maybe
a line.
That's the closest we'll ever get.
I think it might be. Like yeah, I think it's also, I mean, because they're mimicking the people from the past, essentially, is how because I mean, everybody compared them to the Hardys and to the Rockers and to but now they've become their own thing. And I think that they might be the closest thing, because at the end of the day, I think wrestling still is trying to mimic a sport. Yeah. And that's kind of when they tried to do that a little bit in WCW, but that was all Vince Russo. Like at one point, like I think it was Buff Bagwell. He was backstage. He was like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna pin me 1, 2, 3." Okay, and then they went out and Buff Bagwell got beat 1, 2, 3. Like he got pinned. So I mean, they tried doing stuff like that, but it just.
But you also need smart writers, and Vince Russo was not that. So,
bro,
come on, bro.
That's what we gotta do.
I hate Vince Russo.
We're gonna put Charlie Eccles on a pole, bro.
Let me tell you something.
It was funny when you were saying the meta idea of what wrestlers can do. In my head, I instantly saw this match where the one wrestler is like, they have these videos on YouTube, the Botchamania videos, where you can hear the wrestlers call what the next move is going to be. Just with like, don't even try and hide it anymore. Just be like, Andre.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay, so I'll find the clip. I found there was this indie show where they did that one time, and there was this guy. He had him in a side headlock. Okay, and you kept hearing the guy in the headlock going, "What? What?" And they did it. He goes, and he picks up and he goes, "Duck tackle," and then puts him back into it. So, I mean, there are some people that are doing that, but it has to come in small doses. I think, like, for that, it was like, okay, it's a one-time thing. It's these guys that probably know that they're not gonna go much of anywhere. Like, I shouldn't say that. I mean, they're where they're at. They're happy with,
or if what they're doing now is not going to be what they're doing if they hit big time.
Right. Exactly. So,
or like there was the COVID match earlier this year where the guys were like 6 feet apart in the social distancing match. Yeah.
There was that.
That's great. That was great.
It was. Yeah. It was. One of my favorite matches that has come out in the last, and if we're going to talk just comedy stuff, Bryce Remsburg, who is the greatest referee going right now, had a match at GCW, and it was the Invisible Man versus the Invisible Stan. So Bryce Remsburg had to ref a match against 2 invisible people. So if you haven't watched that match, believe it or not, it is one of the most entertaining moments from last year. Because I had this kid. We were backstage, and I was doing commentary for a show, and this kid was just training, and he was training to be a referee. And he's like, "Hey, do you have any advice on being a referee?" He was being real sweet about it. And I was like, "I need you to watch The Invisible Man versus The Invisible Stan. That will tell you everything you need to know about being a professional wrestling referee in today's age." And he watched it right then and there, and he goes, "I get it." Like, yes, you do. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. And Bryce, I did a seminar with Bryce a couple months ago, and he's such a nice guy too. So
That's awesome.
yeah. Okay, let's transition into our actual wrestling topic, though. I love that because I feel like we're going to talk a little bit of comedy wrestling down the road, because I can find you guys some clips. Trust me.
Comedy and wrestling, no.
Well, I think there's a little documentary out right now that we'll have to put on the list of things to talk about eventually. But because given that it is the month of October, I want to talk to you guys about a little bit of horror within wrestling, and then some also maybe some Halloween Havoc from WCW, because NXT is kind of reviving that here in the next couple of weeks. So let's maybe start with Halloween Havoc. What are your guys's maybe you don't remember much of it, but like when somebody says the old WCW Halloween Havoc, what comes to mind for you?
I'm gonna start just because I don't have a ton to say on this one. I think you guys might have a little bit more on this topic. I was never really the biggest WCW guy. Like I was an NWO fan for a little while, and then
as everybody was. Yeah.
And then I was like, this is still not what I like watching as much. But what I remember Halloween Havoc was just the fun graphics of, like, where it would say Halloween Havoc and it would be like a pumpkin.
Right.
That would be the jack-o'-lantern. But it was just never, it was like, I think because I didn't really throw myself into WCW as much, that I never was really like, it wasn't anything that really left a huge impact on me. I think now, kind of going back, and especially this time of year, where the podcast that I listen to, sometimes they'll pick a Halloween Havoc event and just kind of talk about that, and it's kind of listening to them talk about it where it's like, oh I remember that, like, oh, those two people fought Disco Inferno, cool.
We will not be talking shit about Disco Inferno on this podcast.
Whoever suggested we were going to talk shit about Disco Inferno.
I love Disco so much.
Well, then I will be quiet. But yeah, I mean, Halloween Havoc was just, the name of it was fun. But always seeing the logo was fun. But there's nothing about it really that I've really like latched onto. I was going through some of the matches that are most well known from Halloween Havoc's past, and there were ones that you guys were mentioned are going to talk about. But the one that I saw that I was like, oh yeah, was Cactus Jack as a babyface against Big Van Vader.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what? But I think it was like one of Cactus Jack's, like, nearing his end with WCW. And that was kind of fun to watch, because it was like these guys always worked really well together.
Yeah.
Like, they were just two that I really enjoyed getting a chance to watch. So I went back and watched the 1993 Halloween Havoc between Cactus Jack and Vader, and it was a Texas death match.
Okay.
Where with the Texas death match, it is both combining a like last man standing match with a falls count anywhere match with I don't know, almost like an Iron Man match, because it was like you would get pinned, and then they would take a 30-second break.
Okay.
For you to recover, and then there would be a 10 count for you to get up to your feet. And if you got up to your feet, the match would continue.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't, that was it. That was the end of the match. So it's basically like you've got multiple chances here to save the match. And in the end, Vader went over. But yeah, it was just those two guys, because they're kind of darker personas anyway.
Mm-hmm.
To have them go out in Halloween Havoc, that was fun for me. But yeah, overall, not something I really latched onto as much as I would say a lot of other people did.
Well, and that was the feud that Foley lost his ear in. So I mean, that was the exact feud. And that's also the feud that like really put Foley on the map as a hardcore guy, because he would just take. I mean, Vader was real rough in the ring, and that was like I mean, he was real rough. Apparently a very sweet man, but it was a very rough guy. There was their first match that they had to kind of start off their feud. What they wanted to do was they wanted to make Cactus's face swell up a bit, and but this was on TV, so they couldn't let him bleed. So they wanted to just make his eyes swell up, and then go into their program, like, you closed my eye type of thing. What ended up happening is Vader threw so many forearms that he busted Cactus's face open, and WCW had to go through and edit out every drop of blood that was on that match, and then it led into this whole feud, and then the Texas Death Match at Halloween Havoc. But that was, I'll never understand Mick Foley's frame of mind in the early 90s, but like nobody wanted to wrestle Vader. And he wanted to not only wrestle Vader, but he made him look like the scariest man on the planet. And I'm still to this day, I mean, God rest his soul, like I still think Vader is one of the scariest professional wrestlers ever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I believe the only 2 wrestlers to appear on Boy Meets World too. Yeah, by the time by the time I got into wrestling, WCW was not a thing anymore. Because I got into wrestling like 2003. Mm-hmm. And so WCW was not a thing. But I had 2 VHS tapes of WCW pay-per-views. One was a Halloween Havoc from 1998.
Nice.
Which I can talk about. The other was a Spring Stampede. I don't remember which one, but I vividly remember the sets and stages for both. Yes. Because Spring Stampede always had the stagecoach like off to the side. And I don't remember what the match was, but they fought on top of the stagecoach in that Spring Stampede. And Ray had his mask off. That's the only 2 things I remember about
this would have been a much later Spring Stampede then. Yeah. Okay.
It probably was 98, 97 maybe. Gosh, I don't know.
Yeah.
He didn't
have his mask off for very long.
Was that Frosted Tips, Rey Mysterio?
Yes.
Yes. And camo pants.
Yes.
Baggy camo pants.
Not so mysterious.
No. But Halloween Havoc 98 is
Rey Mysterio originated You Can't See Me.
He did look like he was part of the chain gang.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. But my favorite thing about Halloween Havoc is the stage, because Halloween is like my Christmas. Like, I love Halloween. I love horror movies. This is like the perfect mashup of the 2 things I love, or 3 things: Halloween, horror, and wrestling all bunched together. And Havoc always had like these awesome sets. Like the big pumpkin is obviously the big thing with it. Yeah. For some reason, I don't remember the second half of this pay-per-view very well. And maybe because it was a 3-hour pay-per-view and I didn't watch the entire tape through all the time.
Okay.
But I remember the first couple matches, which was like Jericho and Raven opened the show.
Okay.
Which was great.
I don't think they've worked together very often either. No. Yeah, that's awesome.
Speaking of Disco was in the second match. Disco actually wrestles twice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he wrestles Juventud the first time.
Yep.
Beats him to go on and face Billy Kidman for the Cruiserweight title later in the show.
So okay.
Disco pulls double duty.
I bet those were great matches. Okay, god damn it.
They probably were. And like Billy Kidman was like Billy Kidman was probably my favorite like WCW guy to watch when I was a kid.
Yeah, he was awesome.
He had the wife beater tank, the Cena shorts, like doing the shooting star press in those is like a vivid image of
right. His initial I remember him coming into the cruiserweight division coming from Raven's Flock, and it was like their big thing was like, oh, Kidman showered.
This also was during the infamous Scott Hall is a drunk.
Yeah.
So he takes on Kevin Nash, and Nash is yelling slurs at him for being a drunk in the ring. Oh, WCW, we love you. This also had Hogan versus Warrior.
Oh, this is that pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Oh, the flash paper. Okay. So you got the full DDP.
I don't remember. In the DDP Goldberg was.
Do you know the story on that?
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Because I watched a video. Wrestling with Regret is my favorite YouTube wrestling show.
Yes.
And he did a pay-per-view review of this one. So that was my refresher for it, because I had not watched this probably since I was a kid. And the fact that they get to maybe the introductions of Goldberg and DDP,
That's
and the
right,
pay-per-view
cut
cuts
out.
off.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how pissed would you be in 1998?
Especially given the fact that the last 2.5, 3 years you've been pushing the 3 guys from WWF. Now you have 2 guys who are finally WCW originals, and your pay-per-view cuts off. Like that
going on after Hogan and Warrior.
Right.
And Warrior's like his return to the ring since he left WWF at the point. Yeah.
It was
so.
I mean, I remember watching that, and I'm like, what happened? And then my dad's like, just go to bed. But it was, that was still to this day. I think that might have been like the big nail in the coffin, because if that match would have gone on, I would assume those two would have had a great match together. I mean, just the clash in styles, but I've actually never sat down and watched that full match now. So I just know the story.
I don't remember. I know I have, because I had the VHS tape, but I did not know that story, because at that point it was, 03, 04 when I'm watching that. That's 7 years. And it was there.
The tape. Didn't they air the rest of that episode?
I think they aired it on Nitro the next night or 2 nights later. I think
it's something like that. I can't remember what it was, but at that point it was all that you would hear. I mean, I was young. I mean, I was 10 at the time, and that was if I had the internet at the time, it would have been awesome, because it's like, oh, okay, this is finally going to air. Awesome. Okay, let's do that. But
what year was that again?
98. Okay. Yeah, that was. I didn't realize all of that happened on the same pay-per-view. Which is awesome. That's awesome.
And that's funny. I don't remember that's the stuff I don't remember from. I remember the Raven, Jericho, Kidman, Disco Infernos. Not like my favorite WCW wrestler ever, Goldberg. Like, that's not what I remember as a kid for some reason. I don't know.
Well, did Disco walk out with the cruiserweight title?
Kidman won.
Let's be honest.
Come on, guys.
He's
a 2-time WCW television champion. Thank you.
I forget that was a belt there sometimes.
God damn it. Tully Blanchard made that belt famous.
But I think WCW also forgot that was a belt.
They did.
As with every promotion's television title. They forget, oh yeah, we have one of those.
Well, AEW has a television title right now.
Do they still remember it on TV, though?
Well, I mean, I guess they call it the TNT Championship. So, I mean, they got bought by their network, essentially.
I'm going to call him Luke Harper. But is it Brody
Lee?
Lee that has it?
Cody just took it back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Cody just took it back. They did a dog collar match, and Cody
who's
just
the
took it back.
AEW champion right now? Is it
John Moxley?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Not Dean Ambrose.
I was about to say, is it Dean Ambrose?
Which he's he's just going home and hanging out with with Renee Young, just like, yeah, I'm the champ. Whatever, this is cooler. I like coming home to you, girl. That's how how I think John Moxley talks in real life. Hey, Renee. What's up? Did you have a good day?
I remember that was one of my first ones where I'm like, I discovered him before anyone else. So that's what it felt like when I first discovered him, because this was before he was even on NXT and stuff. When he was doing
crazy shit.
Where I'm like, this guy's like the Joker of wrestling. Where's this guy?
Mm-hmm.
That was when I was first getting on wrestling on the internet, was when he was kind of coming up.
Yeah, because he kind of got CZW did a good push of him, I think is what it was. And they did a CZW versus Ring of Honor event one time, and it was Moxley versus Bryan Danielson, because Danielson at the time, I think he was on that pure wrestling type thing. So it was a really cool, hardcore versus the pure wrestler type of vibe. But those two, they had a really good match. But even Brian will talk about that match. He's like, I knew that guy was different the minute he came out. That was, so it's pretty cool. So
different is such a word.
Oh, and he is so good though. But anyway, so Halloween Havoc, I want to talk about, there's one match that always stands out to me, and that was Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero. Their first meeting, it was for the cruiserweight title. I believe it was
no child was on the line.
No child on the line. I almost said Left Behind. But that was. Have you guys watched that match before?
I'm sure I have. I don't remember it right now, though.
Okay.
And I was thinking about that this morning too. I was like, now would be the opportunity to have WWE.
Right.
So I can watch
I think it's on YouTube.
Yeah,
I think so.
I should have searched for that one instead of the Vader versus Cactus Jack one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember it, but I know that you are not the only person who speaks incredibly fondly of that match. It is widely regarded as one of the best.
Yeah. It really is. It's that because it was really the first time that you saw the lucha style. They had the lucha style on TV at the time, but this time it was like this is like the true, like, we gave them enough time to really get that. And I think they only went like 15. I shouldn't say only 15 minutes is a goddamn eternity when you're inside of a wrestling ring, but it's I think they went about 15 minutes, but I mean, they went balls to the wall. And I think there had to have been something like, this is the first time that we get to be on a national stage together. And it was the first time that we saw Ray and Eddie against one another in that big of a capacity. And oh God, they tore the house down. And that was the match for me that really turned me into what is this thing called AAA? What is this thing called CMLL? Like, trying to really find some of the history of what Lucha Libre kind of provides. But that I think that match will probably be one of my top 10 favorite matches of all time. I don't know what Casey's feelings on that.
I haven't watched it in a while. I know I have seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And do Ray and Eddie have bad matches?
I mean,
I
don't think they have a bad match.
I make the joke about a storyline, which was not great to have on TV, but the matches were always great.
Right.
Like, I vividly remember as a kid that storyline later on, like the Dominic storyline, because I was
current WWE superstar,
which is crazy to me. I need to watch his stuff.
Crazy to me too,
because I was his age, like when they were doing the storyline.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? Like, Ray, you better win and stuff like that.
It feels like my two dads are fighting over me.
Yeah. And like their ladder match was like fantastic.
Oh yeah.
And so Ray and Eddie like don't have bad matches to me. And I know I've watched this. I don't remember a whole lot about it.
Go back.
And I might need to rewatch.
Yeah, that's the one that I will always recommend you rewatch. But I will. There are two matches from WrestleMania 20 that I will go back and rewatch quite often, just from like the commentary standpoint of like, where do I tell the story? One of them is Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels. The other one is that opening match from WrestleMania 20 is Ray versus Eddie, where they were
22.
21. I'm sorry. Yeah, 21.
Sorry.
Because 20 is when
where it all begins again.
Yes, where it all begins again. Eddie went against Kurt.
Yes. My favorite pay-per-view ever?
WrestleMania 21?
No, 20.
20.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. Pretty good.
Because that was like Royal Rumble that year was my introduction, was like then. So that was my first Mania.
Oh, man.
My first Mania was 20.
I don't want to talk about your 2004 and how heartbroken you were then.
What?
Dude, are you going to tell him that Chris Benoit murdered his wife?
We'll get into that at some point, because I had to stop watching wrestling. Like, because that was 07? Because I had a 3-year run where it was like every Monday night was Raw.
Yeah.
5 or 6, I want to say, is when it happened.
Yeah.
Benoit?
No, it was. You're right. 7.
I think it was like 7, because Eddie was like 5 or 6.
I was living in Vermilion at the time, and I was like,
yeah,
right.
We'll
get into that someday. Yeah,
we don't need to get into it now. But Halloween Havoc.
I love it. The other thing that I will recommend that everybody go back and watch, because I mean, yes, if you're a pure wrestling fan, if you want to get into the Lucha Libre stuff, go back and watch Ray versus Eddie.
And then this.
And then the Chamber of Horrors match also happened. I think it was 1991. If you're unfamiliar with a man named Abdullah the Butcher, I need you to look up his history. First, get a little respect and watch his shit with Bruiser Brody first, and then watch him get electrocuted in a cage match from an electric chair.
like, that's the fun thing. It's like you gotta say
guy
that.
getting
Be like,
electrocuted.
be like, hold on, before you watch this match, go get some history.
Right.
See how much of a big deal this guy was.
Right.
Then, after you completely respect this man, for what he's able to do, go watch the Chamber of Horrors match and watch him get.
Isn't it crazy how many people have like died on TV? Like, yeah, wrestling, right? Especially on like cages. It's like a
Right.
doula gets electrocuted, boss man gets hung.
I know, right?
What are we doing?
That reminds me.
Fucking Vince McMahon blew up. What?
I have a funny story about that.
The funniest thing with that was like, wasn't it like he blew up and then like next week they're like,
That's when Benoit died.
Because that was when Benoit died. Yeah, that's why. Like,
Okay, so
it was like the limo blew up, and then the next week he's like, "Oh, hey, bud, I didn't die. But
Well,
someone
someone
did."
the funny thing is that was during my stretch of I watched wrestling every night. My parents couldn't leave the house. Like I had to be home every Monday night. So me and my buddy were watching Raw that night. We get to the last 15 minutes. It's Vince just not saying anything and Paul London's weird smile.
Like, well, everybody's watching him leave. Like,
what do we
What
do?
the
What's
fuck is
going
going
on? What's going
on?
on? There's no swagger in his step, nothing like that. And he gets in the limo and just blows up. And I remember maybe 5 minutes after the show ends, my dad comes home from work. And he's like, all right, well, what'd I miss on Raw? We're like, Vince McMahon just died on TV. His limo blew up. He's dead. And my dad's like, what are you talking about? Like, he got in the limo and it blew up. He's dead. He's like, I'm going to bed.
I need to watch this week.
Motherfucker. Goddamn jumping the shark. Okay. Since we're talking about that, someday we will have to talk about the makeup storyline, as I will call it, because that was supposed to be the big angle for that year. What they did to make up for that was the Vince McMahon has an illegitimate son storyline, which was
weren't they going to introduce Vince has a brother that was going to take over or something like that? Was the original like him blowing up, right?
I don't know,
or something like that.
I don't know.
I've heard this at some point. I don't remember where,
but that's so the illegitimate son storyline was supposed to end in the big push for Mr. Kennedy. Now Mr. Anderson, Ken Anderson, has a wrestling school in Minneapolis now. If you're interested and you're in that area, go learn there. It was supposed to end with that. Mr. Anderson gets hurt and can't go on with the story and has to have surgery. So how do they make up with it? Cue Hornswoggle.
it's a goof.
What's our payoff for the storyline? Yeah, right. What's our payoff for the storyline? I don't know. Beat up that little pig in the cage.
Everyone's gonna love it.
It's hilarious.
This is such good shit, pal. Oh, anyway. So, but going back to our original topic, that was my memory of Halloween Havoc. My favorite thing, going back to the Chamber of Horrors, the thing that I vividly remember is not just Abdullah the Butcher doing like I don't care shaking, like was how fucking big this electric chair was in the ring. It took up the whole goddamn ring, and they have to wrestle around it. It's like
So the chair was in the ring the whole time. I've never watched the match.
It lowered down at some point. Okay. It lowered down at some point. I think.
I do remember how big the chair. Yeah. It's like when you go on like vacation, they have like an oversized like lawn chair.
Right. It was when I was a kid, it was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like they killed him. But now I think back on it, I'm like, oh, let's take up the entire ring with this giant electric chair, but let's throw in our 18 biggest guys around the ring. And who can fit in there? Can Vader fit in there? How about those Steiner brothers?
Who was like like head of booking at that time.
It was Dusty. That was a Dusty thing.
So here's what we're gonna do, baby. I just got back from Club Med, and I saw that they had these giant lawn chairs there, and that would look so good on my television. Just put it right in the middle of a cage. But what we're gonna do next is we're gonna electrocute somebody. Let's get that Abbott Buddha the Butcher in there. He's gonna get shot on TV.
Like what year was the Cactus Jack Vader match?
That was 93.
And this was 91, I want to say.
Was Dusty still booking then in 93?
No,
that seems like a Dusty match too. The way they have like.
Why am I gonna lose my job?
No, I think
that match was great. Why would you fire me?
I think Dusty came back because he had a run with WWF, the polka dot stuff, and with Sapphire and everything like that. I can't remember whose decision it was, like reading back on it, but I know that, you know, there was some heat between Flair and Foley, and that's the reason why Foley left. They've since made up and everything like that, but I don't think they, but that sounds like a Dusty thing, like the Chamber of Horrors match. I don't know. I can't say 100% like this was a Dusty Rhodes creation, but
it's a good idea.
I got a pretty hard suspicion as to whose idea it was. We're going to put these guys in the back of a semi. We're going to drive down the road, and they're going to win this match. How do they win this match? God, nobody knows.
If it was a Dusty creation, Cody needs to bring that back.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because War Games was a Dusty creation, and everybody was like, oh, my gosh, War Games, you know, what else does Dusty have left? Well, let me tell you something, Daddy. This guy who's got more cuts on his forehead than me, I'm a little jealous of him. So I'm going to write him off TV with an electric chair. Anyway, so now NXT is going to be bringing back Halloween Havoc. And it sounds like they're going to do the spin the wheel, make a deal, which is the reason the Chamber of Horrors match came out in the first place. So
we could get it.
We could very well get a Chamber of Horrors match here in a couple of weeks. But it'd
be funny if they put it on the wheel just as a goof. Never mention that it's on there.
I think
just as a goof. Yeah.
It would be really funny to do like an Abdullah the Butcher on a pole match or something. But I do want to bring up the topic of horror within wrestling, because I think that you guys, Casey especially, you're a big horror nut. And I want to talk a little bit about like your favorite things that maybe would have scared you, maybe even things that maybe aren't necessarily supposed to scare you within wrestling, but definitely did. Like, what were some things that, like, if you were to compare horror and wrestling, like, what are some things that kind of come to mind when they merge the two?
I know one guy we'll talk about later, Undertaker, is the biggest example.
Right.
So we can talk about that then. When you brought this up, and I see like the list of stuff we have on there, there's one guy that we don't have on there that just, for some reason, I want to bring up, and it wasn't ever a great gimmick or anything like that. It was the Boogeyman.
Okay.
Because I think he's pretty scary looking. Yeah. I think he is probably, out of all the guys we would talk about, like Taker, Kane, Mankind, the Fiend, or even just cult leader Bray Wyatt.
Mm-hmm.
Boogeyman is the scariest looking dude out of all. He's missing his teeth. He eats worms. He smashes a clock on his head. Like, crawls to the ring. I'm like, this guy's weird.
Yeah, I shared a locker room with Boogeyman. Yeah, he came to Sioux Falls and we got to share a locker room. I won't tell anybody anything about Boogeyman because he frightens me in and out of the ring. I never had a bad interaction with him whatsoever, but like, he walked around with that makeup on the whole time. and those are real worms, that, ladies and gentlemen, and they're in his pocket. But yeah, Boogeyman.
Yeah, that's one I definitely like. Especially as a kid growing up with wrestling, Boogeyman was kind of, that was when he was coming up and coming into WWE, and it was like, yeah, this guy's weird. I like it.
Mm-hmm. It's weird. He got to do a segment at WrestleMania with our now president, Donald Trump.
He did. Where Trump wanted no part of that.
I know.
He was so bored with it. He's like, get out of my face. I don't want it. Get your worms out of here.
Can we just send Boogeyman to the White House? Like, just be like,
oh, he already lives there.
He's
already there. Yeah,
he's our president.
Boogeyman. Yeah. His name is Mike Pence. Real. Yeah.
He switched to flies instead of worms.
Yeah. Here's the deal. That if you're watching this, fuck Trump.
Charlie, how does it feel to be able to say that freely with no like anyone saying, "No, Charlie, you shouldn't be honest about your feelings on this." How's it feel?
Oh, it feels really good.
That's
It's been and not to say like, I mean, I've kind of just had to play middleman for a long time, and I mean, I've told you, you know this about me, I think, Andy, but my niece and nephew are black, and a lot of my friends within professional wrestling are black, and like I'm always 100% going to be the guy who supports Black Lives Matter. I will always be pro-life, pro-choice, or I'm sorry, not pro-life. I'm sorry, pro-choice. Like this is who I am, and I've kind of had to play the middleman because I was running an organization that had to play middleman for a long time. But I'm just gonna that Donald Trump is a douchebag, and the election's coming up, and you need to vote him out. So I did. Okay, so we donated to Biden's campaign yesterday, and we got to watch the Q&A with the Hamilton cast yesterday. So that was really fun. So I mean, we're gonna talk about wrestling and blood and everything like that, but like also a little part of me loves musical theater. Anyway, thank you for asking that, but I want to horror boogeyman is where we were at.
Yeah. So do you just want me? My thoughts on boogeyman is that they always look cool, creepy. One of those fun characters. Papa Shango.
Oh yeah.
I'm glad that I can't think of his name. But
Godfather.
That he went on The Godfather.
Charles Wright is his name. Yeah, Charles Wright. Yep.
Was able to kind of go on to a character that had such longevity because you could tell that wrestling was just in his blood.
Mm-hmm.
He was just one of those. He's a character or athlete that just really cared about this business. So it was cool that he found one, a character that stuck and now is kind of like shaped and influenced his entire life. Because isn't he a real pimp or like
no? He runs a strip club, but he did you ever see that story on Dark Side of the Ring? No. So yeah, he played a pimp on TV, but he owns a gentleman's club. He has walked into his club on numerous occasions and said, "If you're a pimp, please let me know," and because they know who he is, and he beats the fuck out of them. So I'm like, this is the coolest guy ever.
Plot twist.
Yeah.
Just from that episode, he seems really cool.
Oh yeah. He did a show up in Minnesota not that long ago that I was not on, but he was on it with D'Lo Brown and a few other people that we know. And I know I got to do a seminar with D'Lo Brown, but D'Lo's a really nice guy too. But
I gotta tell you, real sorry to interrupt. I love D'Lo. Like I love D'Lo so much. Mm-hmm. Like that he was one that when I was a teenager, like growing up, I would be like,
oh yeah, because it was one of the easiest things to mimic. Yeah.
D'Lo's great.
Yeah, D'Lo's great. But everybody talks very highly of Charles Wright because because they did like a full nation reunion up there, and what they did, so they brought in Ron Simmons, they brought in D'Lo, they brought in Charles Wright. I don't believe Mark Henry was there, but I know that they had at least those three there, so that was really cool.
Oh. Yeah, but horror themed wrestlers, like that was my jam. Like, they were all just some of the characters that I got into the most. That I've always really considered my favorites too. Like the Undertaker is probably my all-time favorite wrestler, and we can talk more about that later too. But just all-time favorite Undertaker, Mankind.
Yeah,
I've loved Mankind. Currently, like I have loved Bray Wyatt from cult leader persona. You know, just how that whole character has adapted now into the Fiend and then the Firefly Funhouse. Like I am just enthralled by everything that he does. I think he has got a real gift for not just the athletic, the athleticism of professional wrestling.
Well, wrestling's in his blood. Yeah.
But like just the whole psychology of it all. Like he is a committed performer, and maybe some of that there's a real mix there from real life to, who he really is and what he really believes to his his persona. But I feel like he is so committed to it, and it's just he's somebody that utterly fascinates me. And whatever they do with his character, like I was so glad to see him come back because he was
with the switch too. Okay,
yeah, just because it's like this is somebody that I want to watch. Like, and you know, you can have him be heel, you can have him be somehow be face in this weird persona. I don't know how, but I am just fascinated.
Roman Reigns needs to be the heel, baby.
And then whatever. Seeing whatever happens now with Alexa Bliss kind of joining with that's the crush I have on Alexa Bliss is intense, but like just being able to see her kind of like go villainous with this too, or wherever this goes, it could be a fun.
I'm real intrigued by this, because I think that was. I didn't think that they would pull the plug on trying to do something like this, but especially because Alexa Bliss, like, she's been such a good mean girl character for so long, and she's been very consistent with her draw as well. So I mean, for them to say like we're gonna do this and it's gonna be different, that this is the perfect time to do that with everything that's going on. I think they made the right move with that. But I love Bray Wyatt too.
Yep. I just think there's something about these darker characters, and I don't know, maybe that says a lot about like my what I gravitate to.
Right.
That I just really find those stories and just how far they're willing to push that envelope. Like that's what makes me want to, that's what I keep wanting to turn back to. Like I'll like John Cena and I'll like Roman Reigns and stuff like that, but it's those darker characters, the really like creepy ones that I'm like, where are they going to go now?
Right.
So,
right. Bray Wyatt. Casey.
Yeah.
What do you think about Bray Wyatt?
I've liked him since he was Husky Harris. I mean, come on. I love Bray Wyatt. I have not caught any of the Fiend stuff. Has been me catching clips on YouTube or Facebook or whatever. That's when I was dropping off wrestling. He was not even the Fiend yet when I was stopped watching it. So I catch that's the stuff I'm most interested to go back and rewatch from the last 2 years about is his Fiend work, because that's all I've heard is like, yeah, that's the guy to watch right now in WWE. And to hear that Alexa Bliss is finally doing something different, that because she's been the same character since she showed up, pretty much.
She has been.
Whether she's babyface or heel, like, doesn't matter. She's been the same character, it seems.
Yeah.
With a slight deviation. But to see her go like maybe like Bray Wyatt's Harley Quinn,
right,
is kind of, I'm assuming, what they would probably go for, and I think she'd definitely be all for that. And yeah, I think everybody who's been a wrestling fan for the last, when did he show up? 14? Something like that. 2013.
Well, because it was his first big WrestleMania match was at 30 with Cena. And
36 was the last one. So about 6 years he's been Bray Wyatt.
So about 14.
Yeah, I think that's something. The Sister Abigail thing has been teased so many times, and if that's Alexa Bliss and that's the way they're going, that'd be cool. Otherwise, I like leaving that a mystery too, because that's still super intriguing.
It could be a story of possession, like she's possessed by Sister Abigail,
and we still get like. Who is that? Doesn't matter. Right. We don't need to explain it.
Yeah, I think they did miss. I mean, we could talk about it, things that WWE has missed for days. But one of the things that I will always say that they missed was that year that Randy and Bray wrestled at WrestleMania, and Bray was the champ. Like, and they started doing the weird projection.
That was stupid.
It was stupid, but I thought this was going to be a big like WrestleMania introduction to Sister Abigail.
Sure.
And at the time they had just hired who would become Sarah Logan. Sarah Logan on the indie scene used to wrestle as a character named Crazy Mary Dobson. And she was a very horror character. Right. So I think I was speculating for a long time that she was going to end up becoming the Sister Abigail, because I thought that would be, she would just do Mary Dobson, but she would be Sister Abigail, because she used to come out with like the full hockey mask and like white contacts and everything. She was so fucking great.
Is she still in WWE?
No, she just got released. She actually just found out she's pregnant.
Okay.
So yeah,
she was not allowed to do anything, was she?
No.
One of those missed, like, gets thrown.
Part of the Riot Squad.
All three of them are like missed opportunity with that. That was such a waste of
the Riot Squad.
All three, yeah.
Yes. Well,
that's a different.
They're bringing back the Riot Squad a little bit, but now that because Sarah Logan, I forget what her real name is, but she's married to one of the Viking raiders, and they're expecting now. But they did a resurgence with Ruby and Liv as the Riot Squad, and they're going to do some tag team stuff. Ruby is a local for a long time. Like, I watched Ruby wrestle at First Avenue, and I still have Dave Wheeler, who's one of my favorite artists, did an artist rendition of her, and I have that sign from her that I got to like go and talk with her ringside when I was a fan. That was really cool. But you're right. That's a missed opportunity. That was such a cool little and there aren't many female there are factions. They have plenty of female tag teams at this time because of that, but they just don't have any women factions really. And that was a really cool I don't know. And now they're trying the whole retribution thing. It would have been hilarious if it was just the Riot Squad coming through.
Retribution.
Well,
that's a conversation.
That is.
I don't even know what that is. So
yeah, it's WWE's answer to Antifa.
Yeah, lots of conversations.
There's a lot we could talk about. At least I mean they're giving Ali something. So
I now have a little bit of I guess faith in it because of that.
Right.
But it's still a little bit of a mess.
Hey, we'll let it breathe for a bit. We'll let it breathe. You know, it was at least interesting right away, but then it was now they came and they're not wearing their masks and I don't know.
They have a contract and they were drafted. I know that when someone who tries to destroy my company, I'm going to draft them.
No, they chose which show they're going to be on. We chose which show we're going to destroy, is what they said, or something along that line. Okay, well, there is one that I want to talk about, and because I don't think that he's talked about enough, is Kane. Yeah, Kane is it within horror and wrestling. I think he's been one of the most consistent professional wrestlers of all time.
Yeah.
I think even more so than Taker in some aspects. I think Taker is the larger draw, but Kane has been a lot more consistent and been there a lot more consistently since that big 1997 debut. So tell me your thoughts on Kane, guys.
I love Kane. We talk about favorite big men ever. I mean, I think I lean more towards Kane than Taker as a fan. I think in ring and as far as legacy, Taker is obviously the guy. But when I was watching wrestling, I was watching Raw, not SmackDown, and that was kind of the distinction between the two. Was Kane was on Raw. Taker was on SmackDown. So I never watched a whole lot of Taker besides what I saw on pay-per-views later on and retro DVDs and stuff. But Kane, I watched every single week. And Kane, I vividly remember when I started watching was right after he was unmasked.
Okay.
And so when I started watching, this was right during the Kane and Undertaker storyline leading up to Mania at 20.
Yep.
And so I vividly remember that lead up. That was my first Kane storyline. Was he had already buried Undertaker, Biker Taker at that point, and he was going to come back as the dead man. And so Kane with his glass eye, the smaller eye, was always awesome. And when my dad told me, "Oh, that's just a contact," I'm like, "Shut up, Dad." It's wrestling. It's real.
This is the second time your dad's been brought up.
Oh yeah.
So
my dad would watch wrestling with me all the time, and he would take me to all these events, and he would always say, every time we'd watch wrestling or go to an event, he'd be like, this is stupid. But then the next week he'd want to watch Raw. Yeah, Dad, it's stupid. We get it. You don't have to point it out. But yeah, I love Kane. I wish they never did the whole authority thing. I don't think that fit with Kane was burned in a building. He's Undertaker's stepbrother and Paul Bearer's his dad. And I'm now he's wearing a suit. No. He's a weirdo.
No. What you don't understand is that's actually the American dream. That he became.
But then he shouldn't have been a heel. Then he should have been a babyface.
And now he is the mayor of Knoxville, Tennessee.
if they would have brought all that up, like I'm a success story and now I'm a mayor and like done that, like that would have been fun. Instead, he was just a boring heel again in a suit. And like he wrestled in his suit pants. Like, what are you doing? Stop. But I love Kane, and I think for me as like a horror fan, masks are a big thing. Kane has so many great masks.
He does.
When he shows up the first time you see him in the Hell in the Cell match, like, yes, that is an awesome look. And then later he loses the sleeve, and later he gets the mouth open. And does he have another one after that? Before he takes it off?
He takes it off, and then he does another one that's like it's just all red. Like it almost looked like
the one from like 13-14 was
I'm trying to think. It was all red, but it wasn't,
and had a wig.
Because we found out that he was actually bald.
There's a wig the whole time.
This guy sure looks like Diesel.
He's had so many great looking masks though.
He has. Yes.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if he ever wrestled in this, and this might have been just like a video game thing or a toy I had as a kid, but I had a variation of Kane where he had blue instead of red.
Really?
And I think that might have just been a toy.
Might have been.
But that's all I remember from it, because I don't know if it was ever from anything. I think it was just a toy, but it was like the original, like when he showed up in the late 90s Kane.
Okay.
But it was blue instead of red on his suit. And I think it might have been a toy.
Yeah, I don't
know why they did it as a toy. He looked cool. It looked cool.
That seems like that kind of stems from like the Arctic Blast Batman and the
yes,
all of
that's
those,
probably
like,
true.
How can we sell more toys? Ooh, blue Kane.
Yeah. Well, they sold it.
Yeah, I was all over it.
Yeah. I think Glenn Jacobs, the professional wrestler, has worked for WWE for years, and he worked at WWE for years before he ever caught on with Kane.
Yeah, fake Diesel.
He was fake Diesel. He was Isaac Yankum DDS.
He is a true success story.
He really is. Yeah.
I mean, he was a dentist before any of this. So good for him.
When I was a kid, me and my cousin would always like wrestle, and like we'd always pick like what wrestlers we'd be.
Right.
And I was always big. He was like 2 years younger than me, and so I always would have to be the big guy.
Right.
I would always pick Kane. Like Kane's moveset is one I had memorized as a kid. Like
that clothesline off the top rope.
The clothesline off the top rope, the sidewalk slam,
obviously
the choke slam. Like I had the Kane maneuvers down. So I love Kane.
I do too.
Yeah. Also a big Kane fan. And I wasn't bothered by authority figure Kane too. Like I thought it was, it made me laugh. Like I was like, are we supposed to believe that he went from the voice box guy to But I mean, if you put it in perspective, he went through a lot to get to rise to the top.
He couldn't even talk. They never
speak. So good for him, Glenn Jacobs. I'm glad he's a mayor.
And him tagging with smaller guys is always like my jam. Like him with X-Pac, him with RVD, Daniel Bryan. It always works. Like him teaming up with another big guy never did.
No.
Him and Big Show, the million times they tried that never worked.
Yeah.
But him with like any other small guys, like this works. Totally works.
Brothers of Destruction is cool, but it's still X-Pac and Kane are better. Team Hell No, that's better. I just enjoy that more because it's such a mishmash of styles that you get to watch, and it kind of helps the excitement of each match kind of vary because they're wrestling differently.
I recently rewatched a match with Kane and Pac versus Taker and Big Show. And it's like, why is X-Pac in this match? But he totally holds his own against those with all three big guys in that. It is such a weird thing to have X-Pac in that match, but he totally works with them. And that's I love that era of obviously the era everybody loves of wrestling.
Right. I love Sean Waltman.
Yes.
There's a really great match with actually it was the same show that I met Boogeyman. Also Sean Waltman was on. So that was really, really interesting to have that dynamic, because we had a lot of guys backstage that I never thought I would get to meet that day. But but if you want to get into Sean Waltman stuff, someday we'll have to talk about X-Pac versus Bret, or I'm sorry, the 1, 2, 3 Kid versus Bret Hart from Raw. This would have been far before you were born, but such a classic. But I mean, he holds his own against anybody. Like he knew what he was doing in the ring. So I want to transition in because there's one other person that I want to talk about before we get into our fan cast here tonight. But I think since we've talked a little bit about Taker, and before we talk about Mankind and Mick Foley here, I want to talk about Paul Bearer.
Yeah,
that's I think we need to hear Casey's impression of Paul Bearer. But secondly,
he is in the impression list. Isn't he?
I saw that, and that's why I'm bringing him up. So let's start with with Casey's impression of Paul Bearer.
Okay. All right, let me try this out. Oh yes. That's all I can ever do. With Paul Bearer.
That's all he ever did.
Yeah, that's all. Undertaker,
my Undertaker,
Kane. Yeah. That's
Kane's alive.
Yeah. So, like I've mentioned many times, Paul Bearer coming back was like my introduction into Undertaker too, because when Taker came back at Mania, that's when Paul Bearer came back, and that's voice. Oh yeah, yeah,
getting encased in concrete by the Dudley Boys.
Well, yeah, he got another guy who got murdered on TV.
Yes,
for no reason.
Yeah.
Undertaker was the baby face. He just kills it.
What was so funny too?
Why?
Yeah, exactly. It's like the whole time it's just like Percy Pringle's not trying to get out of this case. He's just sitting in there going, "Damn you! Damn you!
Get them Dudley Boys!"
Yeah.
God, I love Paul Bearer.
I know, right? Okay.
Didn't he get locked in a freezer? So he died on TV twice.
Yeah, he's had
a rough go.
Rough go of it.
Yeah.
Andy and I probably watched when he was in his heyday a little bit here for us, but I want to hear any Paul Bearer stories that you have.
I was such a fan of the Addams Family, and for me, he was. What if Gomez Adams let himself go?
It's his cousin.
And so it was like, I was like, oh, it's like, or like, I was like, oh, this is me if I were Gomez. It'd be cool.
Gomez Adams was my dad.
But no, I loved Paul Bearer. I was creeped the hell out by him right away. Because, when Undertaker first arrived with Paul Bearer, it was Brother Love. Undertaker was with Brother Love first.
Mm-hmm.
But once, Paul Bearer came into the picture, it was just this, what is going on? Wow, why is Saturday morning so scary now?
Yeah.
But you were still kind of fascinated by him. And then once they became faces, they became good. It was like, yeah, oh, raise the urn, Paul Bearer, give him the power, and it would be like, he lifted up, he'd see Undertaker go like that, and I was like, it was great. You really got sucked into the mythos of this world, that they were it was like a father and son relationship.
It was, yeah.
It was they really were in step with each other, and because of that, seeing how they started, when they separated, it was devastating.
Right.
It was a devastating storyline to just be like...
That lasted forever before they got them back together. Them splitting up introduced so many things to wrestling. It was awesome.
Yeah. But when Paul Bearer turned on The Undertaker, it was like... Did that really happen?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, why? What did they do? What happened? Because then it was Mankind that he was behind Mankind, and he was behind Kane, and it was great. Did he manager for Vader too? Am I making that up? Probably.
No, you're not.
Okay.
So it was for a little while, but it wasn't, it was mainly because they paired up Vader and Mick as a tag team for a brief bit. It was Vader and Mankind, which really didn't last. I think. Right. Yep. But it was. Yeah, you're not making that up, essentially. Yeah.
But it was like, why is this guy? Why has he turned his back on the Undertaker like this? But it created such a whole new series of stories that could be told, and I think it was something that now watching wrestling kind of from the perspective of where I'm at, and I kind of, you know, behind the curtain, what happens. You kind of understand that it's. No, I'm not going to say it, but it's
Wrestling's not fake.
it's the storylines are predetermined from that. Other than that, but it's like kind of knowing where that's at. You realize that some things have to change in order for different things to happen.
Right.
It's the nature of the business, and like. When you're young and somebody turns heel, it's kind of like what the fuck is going on?
Right.
And now it's like, okay, well now where are we going to go from here?
Right.
So it was one of those moments where it's like, okay, but looking at it, it's like, yep, this opens the door to so many different possibilities, and we got a lot out of it.
And that was an interesting way to go about it too, because I don't think there was. I mean, there were always heel managers who would turn on the person that they were managing, i.e. Bobby Heenan.
Yeah.
Like he would turn on a wrestler and then that wrestler is suddenly a babyface.
Yeah.
I don't think there was ever a heel turn for a manager the way that there was with Paul Bearer, because Paul Bearer turned his back on the most consistent thing that he had been a part of. And then they introduced the person I want to talk about. This is before you, but have you seen those old like Mankind introduction vignettes that they used to have?
Mm-hmm. I used to have a Undertaker DVD, and most of the DVD was Bearer with Mankind.
Okay,
on that DVD. I don't know why it was, but that was kind of the era that many of the matches and stuff took place in. Yeah.
That was probably, I'd say, I mean, aside from Taker having that 4-year run where he did nothing but Mania matches with Shawn and Triple H, that was probably Taker's best in-ring work, was that late 90s, because that was also like, he would go out there and go 30 minutes with goddamn Psycho Sid. And I mean, Sid was an amazing professional wrestler. He was a big guy, like, but that was probably the best. But I going back to that, those early vignettes of Mankind being introduced, and like that music playing, and like them zooming in on his missing ear, and like him talking to
pulling his hair out. He'd have the little shave, the spots that were shaved in his hair.
Yeah,
he would have the urn sometimes too, and like caress it. And that's some of the best horror stuff in wrestling.
It would have been fun to kind of go back and watch some of those again for me, just because it was like, then I can remember what that voice sounded like, because I would do the Mankind like impression when I was in high school,
right?
Because it was like, this is a crazy crazy character, but yeah, it was just awesome. Like Mankind was just so cool, like such a dark and unsettling character. I loved it.
Yeah, I did too. And Mick Foley, like, I am not a deathmatch person. Sure. I do like hardcore wrestling from time to time, but I think there's a fine line between deathmatch and hardcore, in my opinion. Yeah. But Mick Foley is one of my favorite storytellers that's ever come. Like, because I think back on when Mick was coming in as Mankind in WWF at the time, and he came in after WrestleMania, and they gave him a little push, and then suddenly at Mind Games he's wrestling Shawn Michaels, and he has that amazing match with Shawn Michaels. Like that, for me, if you, aside from things like Hell in the Cell, aside from things like the Inferno matches and stuff like that we've gotten over, and Buried Alive matches and stuff like that, that was probably the closest thing to like a horror show within wrestling. Because like at some point Mick goes over and he hits his knee on the stairs, and he's like, I can't feel my knee. And he's sitting there stabbing his own knee, trying to get feeling back into it. And that was the whole story. Like, and then like Mankind comes out inside of a casket. That was, so I think Mankind is probably, if I were to have a pick, he's probably my favorite character that's a horror character, because it's also like the psychology behind Mankind is that I am a representation from what Mankind is, and how tortured we actually are. And like, that's That's really deep for wrestling. And Bray Wyatt gets pretty deep these days, but like Mankind was a very deep character in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love it. I do want to. So before we talk about our next segment here for you, since we've talked a little bit about this, the next thing that I wrote down, we're going to take a little break from talking wrestling, and Andy Heller has his own segment that doesn't really have a name. But Andy, tell us a little bit about where you got your love for movies and your background within movies.
We'll call this Blockbuster Stories. So I used to work for like from high school into adulthood. I worked at a video store. I worked for Blockbuster Video. Greatest job I ever had. Like greatest job I ever had. If video stores still existed, I still would probably be working at a video store. It was just the best. And like I encountered a lot of crazy situations, a lot of crazy people. But the thing about it is it's like trying to think of different stories and stuff. It's hard to really like remember all of the details for it. But I thought of one because it was kind of like, you know, I paint this out to be this dream, like this fantasy, this wonderful place of working at a video store, and it was just magical. We had to deal with some shit too, like
literal feces.
Maybe I'll save some of that stuff. But like just like terrible customers and other situations that really were, you know, I don't get paid enough to do this. One of those I don't get paid enough to do this is dealing with shoplifters. We would like, there were people that came into our store that would do it multiple times. Like they not that they would do it in one go, like keep coming back multiple times on that day, but it was like they were there once and then like 4 months later they'd show up again and they'd be like, that guy. And it's like, you want to watch them so that they can't steal again. And it's just trying to think of, okay, what am I going to do to prevent this, like him from stealing something? Like, am I just going to follow him around the store the whole time? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to follow him around the store the whole time. And it's like, okay, well, if I do that.
I just imagine you like with like a small bag of like some kind of candy and just like popping up in the alley, just, what you doing?
Well, it's like I would take a stack of movies and be like, I'm going to go put these movies back on the shelf. That's what I'm going to do. So I'd have a stack of movies and just kind of watch this guy. But like, while I was evolving mentally, trying to think of what to do to stop him, he was evolving mentally of like, okay, how can I change my plot so that I can still get out of here with a DVD copy of, I don't know, Sphere, starring Dustin Hoffman. You know, what shitty movie can I steal this week? Because that's what it would be.
Guys, I stole Rollerball.
It would be the remake of Rollerball. It would be some shitty movie that I would find the case like cracked open and he stole the disc out of it. And it's like, at least develop taste for what you're trying to steal. So this time, this one time in particular, I had just gotten so frustrated. Like this is like the third time he had been there in a year, and you know what he looks like, you know what he's doing, but he thinks, you know, oh, it's been like 3 months, and there's no way they could remember me. I remembered him. I saw him right when he came in. I'm like, fuck this. Grab a stack of movies. I'm like, I'm gonna go put these movies back. I'm gonna catch this motherfucker right now. So I go a stack of movies to walk through the DVD section. I see him pick something up, and I'm like, that's a pretty good movie, huh? I'm probably shouting really loud. He's like, I don't know, I haven't seen it. I'm like, well, you will be pleasantly surprised. You should definitely rent and pay for that one. And he looks at me, and he's like, I don't think I'm going to get this one this week. I'm like, okay, that's sad to see that happen. What else would you like? I put a movie, like looking him in the eyes, putting the movie on the shelf. And then it occurs to me, I'm like, maybe I need to tone down the aggression a little bit. Because maybe this guy's not all there, like not on the up and up. Well, then, like at that moment, a cohort comes bursting through like the front door. And Blockbuster's setup was you would go in one door and you'd have to go all the way around to get out. You couldn't go out the doors you came in. They didn't have handles on the doors.
Yep.
But he had this. His friend came in, held on to the door in the foyer, and pushed open the door to the store. So it was like a double door set. And he's like, "Man, we gotta go. We gotta go." And so the guy grabbed the movie. Random movie. I don't know what it was. Grabbed the movie and he ran out the front door and said, "I gotta go." And it just took, like, not even hiding it or anything, held the movie out. And I'm like, I'm not chasing after him outside because fuck that. I don't want to get shot. But through the store, I'm like running through the windows, like looking out the windows, trying to see where he's going, watching him go along the building. And so the way the building was set up is you had these giant windows everywhere. But on this giant windows on the side of the building was the parking lot. So I watched him get into his car, and I'm looking, like staring right at the car, like remembering the license plate so I can be like, "I got you. I got you." So I get out there and look at the car, no license plate. And I'm like, I do that. I go, and he goes, and drives off.
Oh man, like I started this story really loving you and your aggression. I ended the story really cheering for the thief.
I'm sure you did. But the silver lining of this is that's the last time that I saw that guy trying to steal something. So, but yeah, that was my. I figured.
And 20 years later, Andy meets him again by the name of Blake. You want to host a show together?
Pretty funny. That was
The
good.
Criterion break is just Andy's long game to get him into jail.
You're like, I just want to know the title of the movie you took, and maybe it's in the collection somewhere.
You know what movie we should really talk about, Blake? Have you seen the remake to Rollerball?
What do you think about Sphere? So, yeah, I figured start off my stories with one of the reasons why I'm glad I don't work at a video store anymore. But it wasn't all wine and roses, folks.
That has been Andy tells a story about when he worked at Blockbuster.
Blockbuster stories.
Blockbuster stories. Love it. All right, back to wrestling here, ladies and gentlemen. Now, one of our segments that we are going to talk about here. Where did that go here for you? But I have decided to call this Build Your Bowl. And what's going?
Because burritos.
Because burritos. Because burritos. But this is what we decided to do is we're going to fan cast the biopic for a professional wrestler. And given that this month is A, our first episode, but B, it's horror themed, we want to fan cast the Undertaker movie. So I definitely have to look up some actors' names as we do this. But anything come to mind when it comes to an Undertaker biopic for the two of you?
Yeah, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to cheat because this is not going to be a behind-the-scenes biopic. This is going to be what was Undertaker doing when he... I'm going to take the storyline I was talking about earlier. When he went from Biker Taker back to the Dead Man. So he was buried alive. How did he come back?
So like a horror movie.
It's literally a horror movie. And if I'm going to have a horror movie, I'm going to have a horror star in this movie.
Okay.
So Bruce Campbell is going to star as The Undertaker, not as Mark Calloway. No. He's starring as The Undertaker.
So he's going to...
How the hell did I get here? How am I going to get out?
So the movie starts with him laying in the bottom of the hole at Survivor Series 2003, and you just see Kane. Glenn Jacobs is just going to play Kane, just throwing, like pushing the last bit of dirt on top of him, and it just covers him. It goes to black.
Can we have it? It's got to be Glenn Jacobs doing it.
Yes,
but as he's shoveling, I just want him to be like just nonsensical. Just I'm gonna be mayor.
Triple H is just going to come up and pat him on the back.
Yeah.
Good job with that shovel. But yeah, the whole story is going to be Bruce Campbell is playing the Undertaker in hell, and he has to fight his way back to get revenge on his brother at WrestleMania.
Wow.
So that's not a biopic.
It is totally a biopic.
I love it though.
It's a kayfabe biopic.
Yeah, that's right.
If Rocket Man is a biopic and it's a musical, this is also.
Oh man, now I kind of feel like we should make this a musical.
There can be one musical number in hell.
All right, well then fine. Josh Homme from the Queens of the Stone Age will be my Undertaker.
There you go. Oh man. Anybody that you would cast around the Undertaker as characters.
So who
like you want Glenn Jacobs to be Kane.
Yeah, he can just be Kane. That's fine. We need a Paul Bearer. I'm gonna go with the easy choice, and Danny DeVito is gonna play Paul Bearer. So Danny DeVito and Bruce Campbell are gonna be walking down with a bunch of druids at WrestleMania.
I told you to get out of the coffin.
And he's gonna be naked the entire time. When Undertaker shows up in hell, Paul Bearer is there too. So they both have to escape hell. Like
when I show up to walk in the ring, I gotta put a suit on.
It's Bill and Ted's bogus journey, but with Undertaker and Paul Bearer. William Sadler plays Death in this.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the movie. Directed by Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. I love it.
I don't know how to.
I don't know if I can top that.
With that. I took this one a little. I don't know, really more seriously, but I think that was genius. Why didn't I think of that?
Stop podcasting and start writing.
And that's me. Like, I'm so bored with normal biopics. Sure. Like, I just want someone to do a biopic and just be completely out there. Like, I want someone to do the David Bowie biopic, but he's actually a spaceman and goes and fights aliens. Like, that's the David Bowie biopic I want. I don't care about his musical.
Yeah,
watch documentaries on that. I want to see David Bowie fighting aliens.
Like the Ziggy Stardust biopic,
yes.
But it's like him, like a fever dream. It's like he got the idea to write the album when he was out of it with like cholera or something.
No, he actually went on those adventures and then wrote an album about it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I love it.
All right.
Yeah, I took this seriously in case he threw a
the movie
curveball
title
for
is
me.
Undertaker, Buried Alive.
Fantastic. So for my biopic, I went with, for the role of Undertaker, I have someone who is probably considerably too young. Actually, I don't know. I think he's right in the age range where he needs to be. But my Undertaker will be played by Zach Ward. Zach Ward is best known as Scut Farkas from A Christmas Story. But I figure you want a real ginger rascal to play.
Yeah.
And Zach Ward is my ginger rascal. His Paul Bearer is going to be Paul Walter Hauser from the Spike Lee movies, Black Klansman and Five Bloods.
Nice.
I think you gussy Paul Hauser up a little bit. I think he would be fully on board. I think he is a wrestling fan. So I think that would be good. Tertiary characters I didn't really put much thought into, but I think you want to go a little bit crazy. I think Willem Dafoe is our Vincent Kennedy.
Oh,
fan.
fuck yes! Oh, hell yes!
I've always been wondering who should play Vince, and now that you say Willem Dafoe, that's it.
Oh, fuck, we can't ever do this again.
I got an idea for him. You're fired.
Can we kiss my ass?
Willem Dafoe, but then I want to bring back what's his, god damn it, now I can't think of his name, from Spider-Man and Pineapple Express.
James Franco.
James Franco. I want him to play Shane.
Yeah.
I was thinking Triple H. They both kind of have big noses.
Yeah.
Side note, I'm very excited for Dave Franco as Vanilla Ice.
Yeah.
Sidebar.
So if you were to put a couple of other characters in here. I'd want to have, for me, because just of how instrumental he is to my enjoyment of the Undertaker story, would be someone to play Mick Foley or Mankind. That's tough casting, though. I don't know, like, who you could have do it. So you've got to have a jack of all trades. You've got to have someone who is not afraid to gain a little bit of weight, who's not afraid to grow some weird facial hair. So Mick Foley's going to be Christian Bale.
Yes, thank you. I knew this is where that was going.
He'll put on the weight.
That's right. Yeah. He'll do it. Yeah. And then he'll, like, somehow.
I prefer my Christian Bale fat. I'm just going to say that. Like, yeah.
I think this is someone who, you know, he can dirty himself up perfectly and pull that off. Mm-hmm. And then you've got, for Kane, that's a tough one to cast. I didn't really put any thought into that.
What year is this?
I don't know. I feel like it's a gap from maybe, say, the 90s turn. Maybe. Oh, that's a really good question. I think it's just kind of a general overview of the Undertaker's character from that, maybe leading up to American Badass. Maybe that's a good.
Okay.
That's a good time
okay.
frame.
So you're going to end the movie on a Limp Bizkit song.
Yeah.
Yes. Like every movie should. Every credits should end with a Limp Bizkit song.
But with the gong.
It'll end with, you know, Zach Ward looking into the mirror, being like, I've got to refresh my character. I've got to do something about my character. And he opens up the closet. It's a very Brokeback Mountain moment. He sees the shirt in the back, and it's like a sleeveless denim with a headband. Mm-hmm. And he looks into the mirror, and he smiles, and then it goes, roll.
rolling.
You can't even say it without laughing.
That's the credits. Rolling. What?
And just him on the motorcycle driving into the sunset.
Mm-hmm.
God, I don't know. Like, I feel bad because I don't have an idea for who would play Kane, because I almost feel like the only person who would do Kane justice
is Glenn Jacobs.
Would be Glenn Jacobs.
Yeah.
And he's an actor, so just do
we
some
also
Marvel.
See No Evil.
Yeah, do some
Evil 2 is actually pretty good.
Is it?
Yeah. So yeah, that's my small cast right there. There are other parts, of course, that you need to fill along the way, but I don't know. Bradley Cooper as HBK somewhere in there.
See, I had Bradley Cooper as Vince.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I thought
yeah.
he kind of has that obnoxious, and then like also like he can do the obnoxious thing. Like I'm just imagining him in
pissed like Vince. Too.
Yeah.
I almost feel like casting Bradley Cooper as Vince McMahon would be the biggest ego stroke to Vince McMahon. Like, oh yes,
it's the only way we will ever get a Vince movie while he is alive.
Having it be someone who looks like Bradley Cooper,
right?
It's either Bradley Cooper or Brad Pitt has to play it.
Well, I at one point, okay, so I know that we've had conversations because we said we would never do the flare on camera, but. We've constantly talked about what a Flair biopic would look like, but also I think
from the first time I met you, that's what we talked about.
Yes. Well, that's Ryan Gosling, as him as Vince McMahon in like a Big Short style where he just like plays
in the 80s.
Yeah, like he just plays that character from The Big Short, and that's Vince McMahon. Because like my favorite part from The Big Short is fucking Ryan Gosling. I didn't hang out with these guys. No, I didn't. I had Hollywood friends. That would be. I think that would be great. I had Ryan Hurst as Undertaker, who was in Sons of Anarchy as Opie, and because I think he's got the right look. I think he's got the right demeanor. He looks like a badass. Yeah. I've seen him. I got to see him at a con from afar. Sure. He's a big dude. Yeah. Like he's like 6'6". Like he's a big dude. He could pull that off. I think if we went a more dramatic role, Ryan Hurst would be a cool actor to have as not only the horror side, because he has some great acting chops. I mean, Lady Killers, he was hilarious, and but he could also pull off that serious and like sympathetic side very, very well. And then I mean, he can also be very scary because I watched him kill some bitches in Sons of Anarchy. So I think that is my pick for Taker. I don't really have a lot of cast. The only other person I thought about for Paul Bearer is Paul Giamatti. Just because I think that would be. I just think that would be hilarious.
He would totally commit to it.
He would, yeah. Yep. That's I don't know the direction you would take an Undertaker one, so I'm glad you came up with the direction.
Yeah.
I don't want to know the behind the scenes. I want to see Taker do weird stuff.
Because like if we did a Flair documentary, like it would be
interesting and hilarious.
It would be hilarious, and like the direction you would take. But there's not a whole lot known about Taker on a personal level up until recently.
It'd be him drinking Jack Daniels and playing cards. Like that'd be the
movie. Just hanging out with Papa Shango. And Papa Shango's actually in gimmick as they're playing cards.
You got to know how to do dominoes. You gotta know how to play dominoes.
Yes, but we'll bring that back. I think we'll come up with another wrestler for next month, but that's
no promises I'll ever make these an actual real biopic.
Yeah, right.
A biopic or a fictional.
But I love the consistent conversation of the Ric Flair biopic that we have, and that we'll never because I still think that Ryan Gosling should play Ric Flair, and I think
I pitched mine on that show from 7,000 years ago.
Yes.
When we did that, yeah.
Well, you had a really funny one. What was the actor's name? I forget his name.
William Zabka from Karate Kid and Cobra Kai as Ric Flair,
which I love.
Yeah.
I think that would be fantastic. But anyway, that is our Build Your Bowl segment of fan casting. But let's turn around. Let's take a serious break here for you. I want to ask you guys, because one thing that we promised each other is we would check on each other's mental health. How are you fellas during this whole thing?
So I'll start. This is the part that I was looking forward to the most, and I'm not standing up to be like, okay, I get to talk.
It's my turn.
Hi, my name is Andy.
The fun thing about doing podcasts is nobody ever has to see me, but I stand up to stretch because hips and legs, and being tall, you really have to kind of condense yourself when you sit in chairs. So I stretch from time to time just to be like, oh god, that's what it feels like to feel again. I was telling Casey we should have an offshoot show with just you and I, and we'll call it Big and Short. That's right. The big and short of it all.
Yeah.
So typically, this past week in October, very, very rough for me. This would have been the 4-year anniversary of the passing of my father. So it's always something that I carry with me. Very, very mentally, emotionally taxing. On top of that, this past week, my mother fell, split a couple of her vertebrae. Luckily, everything is not serious. There's a recovery process, but she'll be okay, which is super important. But because she will be wearing a back brace and it's kind of invasive, she has to go into a rehab facility for 2 weeks just to kind of stay and recover.
Oh man.
So it's kind of like this is a week where it's like, oh, I'm just gonna take my time and not really force a lot on myself, try and get through this week and make sure everything's okay. But I go to a weekly counseling session.
Good for you. That's awesome, man.
I think it's healthy for me. I think it's super important for me. But I skipped that this week because I was just like, I don't have the energy for it. Let me just deal with this myself, get through this, and then next week I'll be collected in order to kind of get back at it. But yeah, I mean, this week wasn't exceptional, but I think we have those peaks and valleys, and that's just kind of one of those things that we deal with. And I think it's just trying to make our way through it, which is super important. So for me, I was really looking forward to this because it's like, we're always, all three of us, whatever we do, we're always very honest. We're always very much ourselves. But I also feel like there's sometimes a bit of a curtain that we put up just because it's like, well, I don't want the audience to know this about me, or I don't
Right.
want the audience to see this about me. And I think when I've kind of changed the podcast into the way my podcast in the way that it is now, where I'm directly talking with someone so much, it lends itself to moments where we do have those intimate conversations,
Right.
where that curtain gets pulled back a little bit further. But I also think that I'm still kind of trying to hold a little bit tight. When we get to episode 100, where you get to ask me whatever questions you want
Right.
about Babe Pig in the City, I have made myself a promise that I will not hold back.
Nice.
So there is a good opportunity that it will be an hour of me just being like, Charlie, just let me tell you.
Well, that was and just with your podcast,
Yeah.
one thing that I pitched to you the first time that I was on,
Yeah.
because it was like episode 65
Yeah,
or something
right.
like that for yours, and I was like, here's the deal. When you get to episode 100 with the new format that you have, I want you to flip the script. I'm going to ask you the questions so that people get a chance to know you, because you're on there every week, but your focus is on the person who you bring on. And that can be a very taxing thing sometimes when you're trying to produce content and really focus on the outward person that's there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So it was like, it's just like, so now it's been trying to determine what movie we're going to talk about. Like, what am I going to make you watch? And
Babe Pig in the City.
Yeah, it's totally going to be Babe Pig in the City. Babe Pig in the City has a very personal meaning to me. And I think the conversation with that and whatever we talk about beforehand might lend itself to some tears. And I'm ready to let that out.
Awesome.
But yeah, I think kind of, I was looking forward to this segment because this really gives us a chance to just kind of be like, drop the facade. Here's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's okay, or stuff sucks, but we're getting
Right.
through it. So
Right.
yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Rougher week, but pulling through.
Yeah. Well, and 2020 just sucks. I mean, like,
Rough.
that's why I'm glad we're doing something like this. Like, I kind of had to, like, I had to drop out some things for my own mental health. And you guys know that I was the director of SuperCon, and like, I loved it. I really did. But I couldn't necessarily be myself. I had to be the director of SuperCon, and I had to be what they needed me to be.
Yeah.
And like, that was, you guys knew me. I think a few other people from SuperCon knew me really well. Dave Wheeler and our board chairman Tyson knew me really well. But there were like, there were a couple of times I'm like, I just want to go nuts on these idiots. Like, and not on anybody necessarily related to SuperCon, but it's like, I know that if I said something to this person, I'm like, oh, did you know that they were the director of SuperCon? It's like, well, fuck you. Like, like, why does that have anything to do with it?
Yeah.
So, that everything you do is so related. And that's why I had to drop that here. Cause like, I just couldn't, I had to take care of myself. And I'm glad to hear that you're open about seeing a counselor as well. Cause I think one thing that we wanted there to be a strong focus on is the men's mental health, and it's okay to see a counselor as a man. Yeah. I think that's a good thing here for you. Casey, how the hell are you?
I am doing fine. And I think one of the reasons is because, yeah, like you said, 2020 just sucks. It's the worst. And it's such a weird time to be in the world right now. And I think without having like what we do, especially, and I mean, you were tied up with SuperCon this entire year.
Yeah.
And I think that in a way, it causes a lot of stress. Fat dude, SuperCon, backlot. It does cause some stress, but mostly in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it also was a good way to keep us busy during this time.
Yeah.
We were constantly busy doing this stuff. You never stopped your show.
Right.
We never stopped ours. You never stopped planning SuperCon. It just never stopped for us. And I think that's a very stressful thing, but a good stressful thing.
Good.
It's a good thing to have. And I think this is like I told you guys earlier today, like I was so excited to just record in person because I was thinking back. I think me and Brian on Backlot, I've only recorded twice in person since March, where beforehand it was every single week.
Yeah.
And every time we'd have a guest, it was in this room that we're in now. So it feels good to be in person talking to everybody. And I mean, we did a few killer countdowns in person, but it's still, it's never the same doing it online.
Right.
And so this feels really good. And like I've said earlier on the show, like wrestling has always been really a therapeutic thing for me. So now like talking about wrestling for 2 hours with you guys and just the ridiculousness of it, the stuff we love, the stuff that's crazy, but that's the
Let's
stuff.
Go back to Abdullah the Butcher.
Let's go back to let's go back to people being murdered on TV
Right.
for our entertainment. It's fabulous.
The guy died.
Yeah.
We talked about 2 people dying today. 3 people if we count Benoit. So, our condolences to the fucking Benoit family. I'm sorry your dad became a joke on our show. Oh God.
But remember that time Paul Bearer got
Yeah!
submerged in concrete? Isn't that hilarious? So that it's just been a comfort to be able to talk about, like, that's wrestling has always been something that it's hard to find other people that love wrestling like we love wrestling.
Right.
And like so many times on Backlot, I've brought up wrestling. We've done wrestling episodes, and it's mostly because you and I are on that episode, Charlie.
Right. Or I always get brought on for something wrestling related. Yeah.
And it's not because any like Brian or Blake or anyone else, they like wrestling, but I think we have a very different appreciation for it. I mean, we created our own wrestling storyline in podcast form between you two. Like,
oh my God, that's like, I always refer to when Andy's not in the room, and I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I always refer to Andy as my new friend Andy.
Because we did a wrestling story.
Because now we hugged it out.
Yeah. But yeah, I this has been so much fun to do, and I can't wait to do this every month.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I think that's what we're gonna try.
Over 2 hours, like it's so much fun.
Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna try and do is just a once a month get together, check on each other. A big thing that I wanted to promote though, when it comes to men's mental health, NAMI.com, NAMI. If you are struggling, you can find resources there, especially men's mental health. I personally, if you just want to walk your dog and talk about your mental health with me, I'm totally cool with that. That's what I do with my time is I watch wrestling and I walk my dog now. And then I wanted to do things like this, and
silly shows like this help too.
They do.
Like it's just about nothing. There's no worries about what you're going to listen to. It's just 3 guys in a room joking and BSing.
Yes.
And that's the thing that's so fun about it too, because it's like, it's Burritos and Bodyslams. Clearly we're going to talk about burritos. Clearly we're going to talk about wrestling. But with it being the 3 of us talking, who knows? We'll hit the highlights.
We talked about people getting murdered on TV. I mean,
so yeah, it's 2 hours just to get everything out.
Yeah, and have some fun.
About whatever. Yep.
Yeah. I do want to give a shout out to Andy Grody, Skinny Idiot Studios, who did the artwork for our show. That was so good.
Crushed it.
Awesome.
He just crushed it. Eventually, we might have a theme song. Like I said, I think my buddy Keller said he would write us a theme song.
Yeah,
Keller went through a tough year.
Did you tell him my my notes for the theme song?
I did.
Okay,
I did.
I'm so curious to know these notes.
Yeah. But yes, if again, we want to end this on a good note of, if you are struggling with your mental health, make sure to take care of that. Find it in NAMI.org is the website. Make sure to go check that out. For me personally, when I started my round of mental health medication, I used that website to learn more about my medication and the things that I needed to expect. So that's coming from personal experience.
I would say just kind of and we've addressed this already, but just to kind of reiterate, don't be ashamed, don't be embarrassed.
Right.
I think there's a stigma dealing with mental health issues as an older man.
Yeah, as a dude.
But like, just it happens, and we've got to be able to kind of let it be more acceptable to address those issues and seek help for those issues, and get whatever kind of treatment, be it on a personal level, on a more professional medical level. Do whatever you need to, but just know that it's important, and
take care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shower, drink some water.
Yeah.
Like that's it. I will always be like, if I'm ever struggling, I'm like, okay, have I showered or drank water today? Like, nope and nope. Okay, we got to do both those things before we let this be a bad day. So, well, on that note, I think it's we're gonna wrap this up with one last segment, and that is something that we already did a little bit of, But Casey,
I think you're the only one that has not done an impression so far.
me?
Yeah.
I don't think I've.
Andy did Dusty. I did Andy and Paul Bear.
When in all actuality, that was Andy doing Colt Cabana.
So I've done 3.
Yeah, so that was Casey doing Andy
Impression of an
doing
impression.
Colt
Yes,
Cabana.
yes.
So that was impressive.
Yeah, thank you.
And I am not sitting here in my studio apartment in Chicago, Illinois.
I want to talk about that real quick. Sorry to hijack again, but I used to listen to that podcast quite frequently.
That was my first podcast.
Yeah.
My first podcast
Yeah.
ever.
I
Yeah.
just really enjoyed it, and that I don't know, just the way that he said all that really stuck with me, and so I just started saying my version of that.
Yeah.
When I started doing podcasts. But one of my plans, and I shared this with you guys at when I was just kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do, was to do a foreign film Friday where I would pick a foreign language film that I would do a video for and promote it, but I would do it as the American dream, Dusty Rhodes, trying to promote this film from another country. And the only video that I've made so far was for like a Yugoslavian film with this like this very Slavic named director, and I have this blooper of me just completely screwing up the name and cracking up. But the song that I used at the very end was a song that I heard on Colt Cabana's podcast about Dusty Rhodes.
Yes.
And I emailed the band and I was like, look, I'm trying to make a YouTube video. Would it be okay if I use this song in your video? And they're like, yeah, or in the video. They're like, yeah, that's cool. Just mention who we are and it'd be fun. I was totally on board, and I only used it once, but I love that song.
Oh yeah. Colt Cabana's song of the week I is how I discovered one of my favorite DJs named Chumzilla.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But that's yeah, I love it. I think now I want to see Dusty Rhodes doing voiceover work for Parasite.
Hold on. I will make this happen. Give me like 2 minutes. You guys talk.
Okay, and then I also let me see here. Maybe we'll do. Let me choose this here for us. I want it after we hear Dusty Rhodes do that. Then let's from Casey.
Okay.
I want to hear Arnold Schwarzenegger reading The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe.
All right.
All right. So I think what I want to do is I want to do the most famous quote from Parasite, even though it's not a male character. We're gonna do. Hold on. I gotta give you. Let me. Hold on, just a second there. Let me figure out the.
He's got to get into character.
Get into character here.
See, I used to do Dusty singing the song Country Roads to my wife all the time, but I would sing it instead of Country Roads, it was Dusty Roads. So you'd hear me just like, Dusty Roads, take me home to the place where I belong. Ric Flair, Roddy Piper, I'm Dusty Rhodes, take me home.
Now I want to hear Dusty Rhodes doing Old Town Road.
Dusty Rhodes sings Dolly Parton.
All right, here we go.
Not too
All right.
fast.
All right.
Jessica, only child, Illinois, Chicago, classmate of Kim Jimmo. He's your cousin. Then there's the monologue. You know what kind of plan never fails, Daddy? No plan, baby. No plan at all. You know why? Because life cannot be planned. Look around you. Did you think these people made a plan to sleep in the sports hall with you? But here we are now, baby. Sleeping together on the floor. So there's no need for a plan. You can't go wrong with no plan. We don't need to make a plan for anything. it doesn't matter what will happen next. Even if the country gets destroyed or sold out, nobody cares. Got it, Daddy?
That was fantastic. All right, Arnold Schwarzenegger reads the first verse of The Raven.
All right. Oh, hi, Charlie. How are you? I'm Edgar Allan Poe. We're here to read The Raven, you know? It's like The Predator, but not.
I died of rabies.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I ponder, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this and nothing more." So that is the first verse from The Raven.
That was fantastic.
Oh,
I can't do impressions.
I was gonna say, I don't know.
I'm not, like Dusty Rhodes, and I can sometimes pull off a good Cactus promo. All right, well, thank you. That's how we're gonna wrap up here, ladies and gentlemen, because I gotta go eat more burritos with my family. But thank you for watching Burritos and Body Slams. We might have some social media. We might just do bullshit like this every once in a while. If you have any requests, shove them up your ass. And
Audience friendly show.
just kidding. If you have any requests, you can always email us. And we do have a Gmail set up right now. It is burritosandbodyslams@gmail.com. If you would like to hear an impression or something read by one of the impressions you heard, please let us know. If you have a particular wrestler you would like us to fan cast, please let us know. But we are here for some Burritos and Body Slams, and we'll be doing this about once a month is what we're hoping to do. So thanks for listening to October Show. And to quote Cabana again, thanks.